Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are, 5th or 6th of June, we're early June. And I thought, since it's British Flowers Week, you might like a kind of a day in the life of a flower farmer kind of clip. And I'm going to include in it a lot of discussion about managing slugs. Because here in the UK this year, we had a very warm, wet winter. And as a result, even we here at Common Farm, where we have been gardening organically for 20 years, and where we have a really effectively functioning food web, even here we have an infestation of slugs, the like of which I have never seen. I have lost a whole crop to them. Experienced flower farmer. I've been doing this for 15 years and I've lost a whole crop. So I thought we'd talk about slugs management, mitigation of the situation, and see what else is going on in the farm this mid-June. And there may be a little philosophical discussion as we go along, because, that's how we roll here. And if you're new to the channel, you're very welcome. Please do subscribe, press the bell icon, and we'll tell you when we've got more clips coming up. And if any of the tips and tricks we give you along the way are useful, you can always buy me a coffee, or better still, join my club. The links to coffee buying and club membership are in the blurb to all my clips. There'll be more about these little people later. There's their pond. They are my new favourite thing. So come with me and I'll show you. I've planted out the dahlias despite the threat of the slugs, and I'm now staking them because we've had this very warm, wet winter. The growing conditions, now the sun's come out at last, are quite good, so I anticipate very fast, quick growing on behalf of my dahlias, which will mean that they are they're hollow stemmed. So when they grow very fast, they're quite brittle, which means that they can break off very easily. So I will stake them. In a normal year, we might have had slower growth, stronger stems, and here, because these beds are west-east facing and the prevailing wind comes from that direction, and as you can see, we've got a lovely windbreak in the form of those field acers there. So here I wouldn't normally worry about staking too much, but my dahlias need to catch up a bit, so I'm going to feed them. And this warm, wet weather, I hope, will encourage quick growth. So therefore, I risk brittle stems and breaking. So I'm going to stake them. And I'm not going to stake them individually. I'm going to make a cat's cradle with string. And the first thing is to go around the whole outside of the bed with the string, tying it to the posts as I go. Now, before we go anywhere else, first of all, I'm shouting. I'm gardening in bare feet. Now, obviously, if I were ramming sharp spades into the ground, I would not. One would normally be wearing proper boots to protect one's feet, but this is what I would call a pottering day. So no sharp edges near my feet, thank you. And I've been listening to Dr. Rangan Chatterjee's podcast, and he says we should spend as much time as we can walking around barefoot. And he has a house. Everybody walks around barefoot in his house. My house, the stone floors are very cold. And also, my feet, as evidenced by the fact that I'm gardening barefoot in a cut flower patch where there are ducks, my feet aren't terribly clean. So I'm not encouraging anybody to walk around barefoot indoors, but I can give myself an hour's barefoot outside today safely. Please do bear in mind the health and safety for this whole process. Anyway, so I recommend Rangan Chatterjee's podcast for talking about walking around barefoot, and I like the idea of barefoot. Which takes me on to my next subject, which is influencing. Now, I I was a judge the other day. I was an RHS judge at Chelsea and Bloom. More fun than you can shake a stick at. And the brilliant thing about Chelsea and Bloom is it's free. So while the Chelsea Flower Show is an expensive day out, really, really expensive day out, all around the Chelsea Flower Show, in the streets around it, all the shops and businesses really engage with the process and cover their fronts and build onto the pavement amazing floral displays, which are absolutely worth the trip on their own, never mind the Chelsea Flower Show. So if you don't want to spend 120, 30 quid going to the Chelsea Flower Show, go to Chelsea and Bloom and enjoy. It's sort of the Disneyfication in a really good way of those streets around the Chelsea Flower Show during the week of Chelsea. So that's really fun. Anyway, I was judging, and I judged with my co-judges were several other RHS judges. I'm watching a blackbird going through my seedlings. Several other RHS judges and a couple of influencers. And one of them was called Josie London, and the other one was called Deborah Brett, and they were very, very nice. And I feel as though I've had my eyes opened to the world of being an influencer. And I can tell you now, I will never be an influencer because you have to look so tidy. And your job, your paid job, is to demonstrate what it looks like to live the dream. But in order to do it, because you're selling the clothes and the shoes and the hats and the gloves and all of that stuff, is the clothes, the shoes, the hats and the gloves. And you have to look clean and tidy, because otherwise the clothes don't look at their best. You have to be a kind of living mannequin wearing the stuff that it's really hard work. And I was talking to my colleague Nicola yesterday, who those of you who've done workshops will know, and many of you who've been following me for years will know that Nicola is my right-hand woman, and without her we would have descended into chaos and mayhem, even more chaos and mayhem, years ago. She keeps me on the straight and narrow. She makes me think strategically. She is what every small business owner needs, a right-hand person with a clear view in from the outside. And she said, we were talking about this influencer thing, and she said, the thing about you, Georgie, is you don't care what you look like. And it's true, I don't really care what I look like. But then I was thinking about this in the middle of the night. I'm a menopausal woman, so I spend a lot of time at night, wide awake, thinking about stuff. And I was thinking about, do I really not care what I look like? And the conversation was because I had put up on Instagram a photograph for British Flowers Week of me holding a couple of pots of dahlias here, standing here in my apron, in a really manky old Marks and Spencer's vest. And she said, and bare feet. And Nicola said, you don't care what you look like. And I don't care if I look pretty. It's true, I don't care if I look pretty. But in the middle of the night, I was thinking about this. What I do care about, and I do think this is important, and possibly one of the reasons why I do this whole process, I care that I look strong, capable, and intelligent. And so when I post pictures of myself in a manky old Marks and Spencer's top and bare feet and a very grubby apron, holding up dahlia pots, it's because I want to look strong. So I do care what I look like, but I don't think I'd make a very good influencer. This blouse, by the way, is by Sarah O'Keefe. I'll put a link. She doesn't pay me to say this. I like them. Here's a cup of tea. Oh, look at that. It's a bit by magic. Right, on we go. When you design your cut flower patch, make sure there's somewhere to put your teacup so that you can find it again. You're welcome. this out of the way. Something like the pea netting, which I've got there, that's, if you try and grow dahlias through that, you end up breaking the dahlias every time you try and harvest. So I've done this at about knee height, all the way to the end. So the reason I want to look strong and intelligent and able is because I feel as though we all have, in some ways, we do, all of us have our own influence, whether we like it or not. Everybody influences the people around them by the way that they dress, the way that they communicate with each other, the way that their body language, all of that is very communicative. And so I think that as a woman in her mid-50s, my responsibility in some ways is to demonstrate that while, soi-disant, living the dream can look like this. Look at the beautiful day. It's hard work, physically strong work, but what makes it interesting and therefore makes me intelligent, and I'm always saying this to people, become a flower farmer and you will become more intelligent, because there are so many different things that you have to strategize about, so many things unknowns that you have to learn to deal with, slugs for example. And making a business out of a very modest income, making a good life out of a modest income is enormously challenging. So I hope that by standing looking strong and intelligent, I inspire other people to think that they too are allowed to look strong and intelligent, and that their strength and their intelligence can be their asset. I'm always saying to people, my main asset above all else is my energy, and I inherited that from my mother, and I'm very grateful for it, because even when I have sleepless nights, I have enough energy during the day, more than enough energy, and that is a gift, and I'm not going to look that particular horse in the mouth. And if other people can recognize that their energy too is really, really valuable and it's something they can do with it, their definition of being a person who can make a big contribution in the world need not be defined by the level of maths O-level they got, or what qualifications they have, or, obviously qualifications are useful, but you can be as qualified as you like as a horticulturalist or a florist, but if you haven't got the energy for it, then flower farming is going to be tough. And so you need to eat well and not drink too much alcohol and keep off the sugar, and nurse that energy, harvest the energy and use it as your asset. And you're allowed to do that, everybody. You're allowed. So on the subject of slugs, you'll see there are some things here which have done incredibly well despite the slugs. For example, my Gadisha, which is not a crop I normally grow, but now I know it is entirely slug proof, I will grow it every year. And anything that was in the ground and survived the winter has done really well. For example, the feverfew and the hollyhocks, which were a trial crop there. But normally, between the hollyhocks and that Ammi-majus, would have been a lot more Ammi-majus. And that little heap of Ammi-majus there is all I've got left of 60 Ammi-majus plants which were planted there. The slugs have taken them all, and they've taken a great deal more. So, since I am at the stage where I'm planting out, for example, some of the floret zinnias, it's time to bring in the big guns. And I'm not a big fan of nematodes, and I know that they are a great thing. People really love them, and they water their gardens with them, and they have a massive effect on the slug population. But I feel as though it's a kind of, you're really changing the ecology quite dramatically by watering all the nematodes in. And obviously this is not a scientific opinion, so please, if you're a nematode worm seller, please do put a comment. But having lost a lot of seedlings. I mean, look, these are salvias, hardy, perennial salvias. And that's what the slugs have done. But don't panic, because signs of life. A bit of paper, have that. Signs of life. They are not dead. They will return. But I suspect not for cropping this year. And so when my neighbour, Amber, said, could she bring some ducklings to the village plant sale? I said, of course, little knowing that Fabrizio would give in to temptation and invest in 3 of them for us. And they have been a gift because they're very amenable. Look, they're not yet grown up. They've still got their wing feathers haven't come in, but one can walk them up and down the paths between the flower beds, and they will help themselves as they go to slugs and snails. And they are not only very good for one's mental health, look, he's agreeing with me, but they are fun to have around. And until the fox, I fear the fox, but until the fox get them, I mean, they're quite big actually. They're not fully grown at all. They're bigger than chickens. We've had chickens before. And these guys are much bigger than chickens. And so I think they'd give the fox a run for their money. It's just they're a bit easy to see because they're Pekin ducks. So they're white, which makes them very, the Disneyfication of common farm flowers continues apace with these lovely ducks. But they will be easy for the fox to see. But in the short term, they are being very, very fun. And they are making a huge difference on the slug population. So thanks, ducks. You're very welcome. And I'm enjoying you. They make such a sweet little noise. And they're very tame. It's important to know where the damage comes from. That was a blackbird, and I saw him do it. So it's very important that you don't think that I do all of this. On the contrary, I do some of it, and then my neighbour, who lives across the way behind those trees, does 10 hours weeding a week between sort of mid-February and November time. Fabrizio works full-time for the flower farm, and he does all the heavy work. He does the mowing and the ditching, building duck houses, generally all of that stuff. And I do seed sowing. I curate the patch, if you like, seed sowing, propagating, some planting out, some weeding. I worked it out once. I do officially 35 days, full days gardening a year here. So it's a little over a month. The whole of the flower farm takes 222 full days a year. So it would take, this 7-acre patch would take one person, it would be their full-time job to run it. But of course, we're all doing other stuff. So my neighbour isn't here all the time. She's not here year round. She's only here for a certain number of hours a week. Fabrizio is full time, but he's also an artist, and we have teenage kids, and he does most of the cooking. And and there's a building with the thing up the field, the studio, which I'll show you a bit in a minute. And then I do all the harvesting and the floristry and the sales. Nicola, who you may have dealt with, She runs the website. She does a certain amount of social media. She does all the Canva kind of design stuff. She makes me keep in charge of my what's it called? YouTube and things like that. She makes me not be too scattergun about everything. Easier said than done. I may be strong and able and intelligent, but I'm also in a hurry and I have no patience. So if you're going to be a flower farmer, think about what your job in the business is going to be and have people who are going to help make sure that you do the best you can and don't be too all over the place. And yes, of course, we do have a bookkeeper and an accountant as well. So that's how this whole 7 acres is run. Bookkeeper, accountant, Nicola, who works remotely. We meet about once a month for a few hours. She came here yesterday. Sue, February to November, 10 hours a week. And Fabrizio full-time and me full-time. 7 acres. Right, you can hear I put my flip-flops back on. Or maybe not. Let's have a quick spin around the rest of the place and I'll show you what's going on. Now the tables have come out of the polytunnel. These are propagating tables and they are in the shade here. And if you want to know more about them, book a place on my biennial sewing workshop demo, which is next Friday, the 14th of June, 5 o'clock British summertime, and all will be revealed. So half the big tunnel is full of lovely crop for now. And the other half where the ranunculus were, the ranunculus have been cleared and I'm hedging my bets against those slugs, just in case the ducks can't keep up with them. I put some amaranth and cosmos and zinnias in here, just in case. And here in the small tunnel, the main sweet pea crop is just getting going. It's not really at its full whack yet, but I'll certainly have a couple of hundred stems to cut for this weekend's orders. It's going to be a good year for the perennial phlox, I think. The dead trees in the hedge, can you see those? Those are elms. And since we've had Dutch elm disease in this country, elms will grow happily to kind of high hedge height, at which point the beetle gets them and kills them off. But they make very good dead wood in a hedge. So some people, if they're very tidy, would pull them out. But we leave them because the beetles then, it's a very good place for all beetles. A lot of animals really need a lot of dead wood for forage, somewhere to live. In the winter, this is very, very wet patch, so I'm astonished to see that the agapanthus I put in here in a knee-jerk way at the end of last summer have survived and are, I would even arguably, are flourishing. And this amused me. This patch is, you can see all the dead strawy bits. That's where normally my big patch of Salvia uglanosa is. And when I came the other day, I thought, oh no, I've lost the salvia, where's it gone? And then I realised it's just moved itself along a bit. So I've still got it, it's just not in the same place. I love this, look. So there's the archway into the polytunnel area, and if you follow your eye all the way up to the top, can you see there are pink roses growing through? They've threaded themselves through, and they are Shropshire Lads. They are my favourite rose. You can't order it anymore. It was a David Austin rose and they've stopped selling it. It's off they massively cut their list back, and the Shropshire Lad was one of the ones to be cut back, so I'm very grateful that I've got it. This great mess of hose pipe is all about keeping the ducks with fresh water. Untidy. Look, more Shropshire Lads. Aren't they just delicious? Hello, tea cake. You see, if I were a proper influencer, I'd have to have my toenails painted and my feet would have to be clean, and that would be impossible to maintain. I think being an influencer is incredibly hard work. I know sometimes people say, oh, you know, it's something you can do on the side and, you know, it's just a nice bit of extra money and stuff. But sometimes people email me and say, please, can we send you our deodorant or gardening trousers? and you can have the gardening trousers or the deodorant. And I say, well, I don't really want the gardening trousers, thank you very much, or the deodorant. Thank you very much. And they say, well, then we'll pay you a little bit. And you go, God, by the time they've even said that, there's a lot of back and forth. At the time, it's hard work being an influencer. That's all I'm going to say about that. Not my line. And wow. Oh, you'd have to have your hair brushed all the time. Anyway, here we are at the wildflower meadow, and the buttercups, if you just glance at it, it still looks very yellow with buttercups, but the buttercups are beginning to go over. And if we look carefully, there's a honeybee in the buttercup. So I'll see what I can identify for you. This little person is a corky fruited water dropwort. This person, that's wild sorrel, buttercup, oxeye daisy there. And then on we go. And there are, once you get your eye in, you see that there are a lot of orchids. And Fabrizio has his once a year wildflower meadow workshop on Monday. We're going to try and film it, but he's such a perfectionist, it might be hard to film because because of the number of takes we might have to do. Anyway, we'll see. But there are orchids. All the little purple spikes are orchids all the way through. It's like a tapestry of orchids. And this is Fabrizio's, it's his life work, making this meadow. It is breathtaking. I know I'm telling you what to think of it, which is always really annoying when people tell you what you have to think. But I think it's breathtaking. To me, it is breathtaking. And down here, look, the first of the knapweed, this purple person here. And look, the orchids, because it's been so wet, the orchids are taller than I've ever seen them. And they're standing proud of the sward. I can never remember what this one's called. It looks like a very tall dandelion. I'm sure one of you will tell me. More orchids. And the blue just beginning to come now. And this will be a massive blue. That's meadow cranesbill. It's a wild geranium, just beginning to pop, but not yet. I can't yet see any, look at that tall orchid. I can't yet see any of the scabious, which we get in the high summer. And there's much less this year yellow rattle, and we think it was because of the rain. We had such a wet late winter, but there is yellow rattle, just not as much as normal. Look at that. If you're ever thinking about why you do something, why you have your job, I'm going to make a clip about why, thinking about the why. This is why we do our job, so that we can, we've created this meadow, and from a field of thick ryegrass for feeding cattle, and it is feeding all the invertebrates and replenishing the native seed bank around here. And that's our why here at Common Farm. next up, this is the honesty crop. So we've been harvesting this since, I don't know, early March, and I cut the last 100 odd stems for a wedding order last week before last. So March, April, 3 months crop from one plant, and I've got all of this, which gets hung up to dry and then sold or used again at Christmas. So very useful. And the pots behind me, those are the pots the dahlias were all in, and they need now sorting out and putting away. So we're just, bumbling away. The sun is full out. It's not time to harvest now. I often harvest on a Wednesday and a Thursday, but this week, for various reasons, I'm harvesting on Thursday. So I'll be harvesting tomorrow morning a fairly big order for a wedding and my regular little bits and pieces. All right, I better get on with doing this. This is when I listen to a podcast. Oh, and we stopped for lunch. Another reason I couldn't possibly be an influencer, because we almost eat out of the pan. But one of the podcasts I like is the Zoe podcast, where Tim Spector's always encouraging people to eat 30 different kinds of fruit and veg in a week, which feels like it's really, really hard work until you realise that you can include proper coffee, red wine, and all of that malarkey. So I'm excited because I'm the sort of odd person that likes to count things. I count all the time. So I've counted how many different kinds of fruit and vegetable I've had today. So far, and it is 2:10, 15. I'm not sure it would all count as what the government would call a serving, but I think the whole point is just to have a little bit of as much as you can. Anyway, 15 so far. And I'm doing this job inside because it's a bright sunny day, and while honesty is not famous for causing phytosensitive blistering on the arm, any very sappy material on bare skin in bright sunshine, you're kind of asking for trouble, and I've got quite a lot to process. So I'm doing it in the shade, and from time to time I'm rinsing my skin. I have quite sensitive skin. If you're a flower farmer, anybody who deals with living plant material a lot on bare skin, maybe like me, find that over the years they become more and more sensitive to sap on the skin. And I am now, having done this job for 15 years, my skin is quite sensitive, and I can feel it. There's a sort of tingling in my fingers, little tingling on my skin, and that is a warning sign to me to just rinse the sap off from time to time. So I'm processing all of this inside because outside it's sunny. And honesty does not have a reputation for causing phytosensitivity. Say this when you've had a couple of glasses of sherry, why don't you? Phytosensitivity and allergic blisters on the skin, but I'm not taking any chances. It's not a job you do in a hurry, but they do look nice hung on the door there. Right, every time I've got a good lump of bunches, I'm going to hang them in the polytunnel to dry, because there won't be room in here, and I'm moving up the field anyway with my to my new studio. There won't be room there, so these are going to be hung in the polytunnel to dry for the summer. Right, before the end of the day, I'm just running up the field to photograph for my client my Philadelphus. This is classic common farm flowers action. It depends on the state of the Philadelphus, how many stems I'm going to cut tomorrow morning for my client. So this is called customer service. So I will photograph. As you can see, the Philadelphus is popping all over the place. It's Wednesday. This is for a Saturday wedding. And I'll give my client a good idea of what it's looking like. She'll order accordingly, and part of tomorrow's order will be cutting some of these. Meanwhile, look at the bees on this for Celia. Humming, 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 humming with bees. They are everywhere. All kinds of bees and pollinators. If only there was smell-o-vision. Right, it's 20 to 6 and I'm going to sweep the table. I have one more tea cake. I have one honestly, I have one more job to do this evening. I'm going to sew some biennials a week early, 10 days early, but I have a demo an online demo I'm doing next Friday, the 14th of June at 5 o'clock British summer time. And if I sow some seed today, 10 days ahead, I will have some seedlings that I can use as part of my demo. So I'm not sowing my biennials, I'm sowing a tray of biennials which will give me seedlings to demonstrate with next Friday. So that's going to take me up till about 6, and by which time I might have my order through from my client, so I might actually go and cut it all tonight. I'll just wait and see what she says. Right, it's the next morning. The plasterers are here doing the render on the new studio. We're nearly there. And I'm just making a list of flowers I'm going to cut. I'm going to do my harvest and then I'm going to water. And there's method to my madness. No, hold on. Yeah, that was the plasterer just checking the colour for the render. We're going very, very red. So I'm just making a list of flowers I'm going to cut. I'm cutting the flowers first, not only because I don't want to cut them when it's warm weather, although it's cool today, it's actually cold, but also because then I'm going to water my new seedlings afterwards because the slugs will have gone back to bed. It's all about the timing. And here I am to cut the sweet peas. And of course the honesty is now hanging in the way, but not in a bad way. That's just the way we roll here. We have to make room for everything. Crop by crop by crop. I like to cut my sweet peas in large bunches of toning colours. If only there was smell-o-vision. Oh, that's better. A little bit of red to add to the mix. Oh, it's filling up in here. Can you see this? You can see the honesty at the other end of the tunnel. And I have to be careful when walking around on account of behind me are the tomatoes, which will grow up and take the place of the sweet peas when they're done. Love the froth of the Amimagus. Right, let's go and get some roses. This little path up to where the roses grow is flowering beautifully. Always plant a tree in your cutting patch so you've got somewhere to park your trolley in the shade while you're cutting. Oh yes. Right, so that's a nice little cut. Not quite finished yet, but time to do some floristry, and I always like to finish these clips with a little floristry if I can. So before I carry on cutting, let's do some flowers. really. What more could you ask for on a sunny June day? Right, I'm off to deliver this and then I'll get on. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have noted I've yet to water my little seedlings that I said I was going to do this morning. So that's next on the list. But I hope you've enjoyed this kind of day in the life. I started at sort of lunchtime yesterday and I finished at lunchtime today. So 24 hours in the life of a flower farmer. I've been thinking more about the influencer thing, and it is incredibly hard work. It must be incredibly hard work because you are demonstrating all the time how valuable the products that you're making content about are potentially to the people watching your content while doing your life. It's really hard. I really hats off to people who are, filming tablescapes in their greenhouse, because it's a greenhouse and it's full of greenhouse activity. And it's really, I take my hat off. It is a job, a full-time job, and it must take enormous amount of strategizing, planning your calendar, advance work so that you know when you're doing what all the time, because at the same time you have to earn a living. It's not just, free money. Anyway, so hats off to the influencers, because I feel as though I've had my eyes opened a bit, and I think it's not an easy ride. It may appear to the outside people are swanning around having a lovely time wearing beautiful new clothes all the time. But actually, when you take it apart a little bit and you analyse the work that must go into planning all of it, and the filming and the editing and the captions and the linking, I mean, you think you'd make a good living, but actually you must have people helping, because otherwise you couldn't possibly do it. There just wouldn't be the amount of time in the day. Because you have to keep filming. Anyway, influencing aside, this is off to number one Bruton, who are my friends and clients, and then I am going to go and see my friend Saskia Marjoram, who has a wonderful brand called Saskia's Essences, and she makes flower essences like the bark flower essences, only she makes them in very small batches, with flowers, often with flowers I've grown. Her rose mist, for example, is made with my roses. And she's got a new shop. So I'm going to go and cheer on her new shop in Wincanton, deliver these and water my seedlings. Have a lovely day, everybody. Happy British Flowers Week if you are a grower. And if you're not a grower, that's very weird. I think that was a bird hitting the window. If you're not a grower, but you haven't come across your local flower farm, do have a look and see if you've got a grower nearby who might have an open day this weekend. It's also Open Farm Sunday on Sunday. So I happen to know that my colleague and Affordable Wedding Flowers affiliate, Foss Farm Flowers, hello Sue, is open. They are farmers, traditional farmers as well as flower farmers, and so they are open on Sunday. So have a look at your local flower farm and see if they've got an event that you could go along or support this weekend. But equally, buy your flowers from your local flower farmer year round. For as much time as they offer. Because the quality is second to none. The scent, local flower farmers do not generally pulse their flowers with silver nitrate to stop them producing ethylene, which means that they are very, very scented. They won't last 3 weeks in a vase on a sideboard, gathering dust. But they will last a week. Anyway, have a lovely day, everybody. I'll see you soon. Bye.